Hey guys, I hope you had a chance in the last couple of weeks to check out our last episode with Alex Chen on all things social media and content creation. Social media can be a challenge, but remember what he said: stay consistent, do your best, and stay open to the possibilities. So last week I had quite an interesting week as a tennis professional. It was a week that left me inspired to do better in this industry, and it was a great reminder of just how many people are out there who absolutely love being a part of this as much as I do. So if it's okay with you, I will give you a little recap before we go on to today's episode, just to share some fun updates. So it all started with the PTR International Rackets Conference. I only got to attend for one day, even though it is held here in my hometown in Tampa, but I was traveling that week. And it was definitely a very different experience than what I'm used to. I actually received an award at the conference, and I'm not saying this to show off, I promise. It was the award for Young Pro of the Year, and trust me, the young part is my favorite part. I love that I'm still considered young, and that part I may just be bragging about. All jokes aside though, it was very special to me and meant a lot because, well, a lot of stuff has happened in my career. I have questioned so many times if I wanted to continue down this path, but of course, I love it too much to step away. And while I have met countless incredible people, and mostly incredible people, well, guess what? I have also met some incredibly terrible, crappy people who made me doubt myself, who made me want to quit, who tried to hold me back and things like that. So getting an award just allowed like a moment of reflection, gratitude that I am where I am and that I have stuck it through. I'm so lucky to get to do what I love, and I really should never, ever, ever forget that. So this award was like a good omen, a little push to keep going. It's really cool, and I'm really grateful to the PTR for doing that. And I would also like to congratulate all the award winners. I wish I had the list to give every single one a shout out, but if you are listening and you want something, just know that you deserve it. You should be proud, and you should tell people about it. There's nothing wrong with that. Celebrate all the wins, big and small. I also got to be part of a roundtable discussion or a panel called the Director's Playbook with some great people like Ed Shenefi from Beyond the Baselines, Patricio Misitrana from the Sports House, Jeff Locon, who's the director at Fox Meadow Tennis Club, and Amy Pasahanik from Agape Tennis Academy. Shout out to them for being awesome professionals in our industry. I was just happy to be a part of it and would have been just as happy to just sit there and listen to them talk, but I was stoked that I was able to contribute in any way. One more thing I want to say about conferences and speakers. Look, the comment of the fact that there seems to always be the same speakers at conferences has come up on the podcast multiple times. And I'm starting to understand a few things that I was not aware of before that kind of help make sense of why that's the case. One, there is no money in it, though you may just get your conference paid for or even hotel sometimes. You don't actually get paid to be a speaker. Now, this is according to people I talk to. Maybe some do. I don't know. Maybe some do get paid, but nonetheless, I doubt it is much. You may not be surprised about that, but I was a little bit. Also, people make it look easy, maybe because some of them have done it so many times, but regardless, they make it look easy, and it's not necessarily the case. It's not necessarily easy to put a presentation together and get in front of other pros to talk. So not everyone is going to be great at it, and some will get better every time that they do it. But it's not really fair to criticize. It's like The Man in the Arena, which is my favorite thing ever. And if you haven't read it, just Google it. It's an excerpt from Roosevelt's Citizenship in Our Republic speech, I believe. It will take you 2 seconds to read it, and I think you would love it too. I might just read it to you at the end of this recording, just because this intro is already going to be a little bit long. But the point of it is that it is very easy to criticize the quote-unquote made in the arena from, being a spectator on the sidelines. So anyway, I'll read it to you. I was at the conference for that Monday, and Tuesday I flew to Austin for the ATX Open at Westwood Country Club and the Game Changers event. Grand Slam champion Marianne Desward was here on the podcast telling us all about it, if you remember. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to that one yet, you definitely want to check that out. She is absolutely amazing. So the tournament was super fun, of course. When is it not fun to watch the best players in the world do their thing? It's always amazing. And just as amazing was the Game Changers event. The event itself was beautiful, well organized, the food was delicious, and Marianne hosted a conversation with Katrina Adams and Megan Rose, and they all did such a good job. There were a lot of women leaders in the industry in that room. It was just fantastic to get to know so many amazing women, and I really left feeling so inspired and ready to kick ass. I also got to visit Meredith Geiger Walton at the Austin Country Club, and Chris Gale at Bentry Country Club, and Michael Jordan at Dallas Country Club. And this is all because of me being a part of the Directors Club. I truly have made some amazing connections through that. And these connections are amazing, not because they're directors at these beautiful clubs, but because they're just amazing people who want to grow, connect, and help the industry. So maybe you want to take a look into joining the Directors Club. I certainly have been able to make amazing connections, and I really like what they're doing. Okay, so now onto today's episode with Lane Evans. He is a veteran in the tennis industry, so he has a lot of great insights to share with us. As always, please visit VidaTennisPodcast.com for all things Vida Tennis. And if you would like to support the podcast, please share it with your peers. Get ready to hear from one of the best out there, only here at Vida Tennis. Enjoy. Welcome to Vida Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. I am your host, Jennifer Gellhaus, and today we welcome Lane Evans. Lane is a tennis and golf performance specialist with over 45 years of experience. He's currently the head tennis coach at Westchester Country Day School in North Carolina and president of his company, Lane Evans Tennis and Golf Performance. His background includes positions like director of tennis and wellness at Champion Hills Country Club and general manager for the Big A Athletic Club and Country Oaks Racket Club. He is certified by the RSBA and PTR, and he holds multiple certifications for pickleball, golf, racket stringing, performance and fitness training, and a multitude of other things. He is a highly decorated professional by the RSBA and the USTA, and he has been a speaker at multiple conferences. I'm really excited to welcome Lane to Vida Tennis. How are you today, Lane?
Thanks, Jennifer. Like I said, I feel like we're brother and sister from different mothers. I've listened to all the podcasts so far, and I'm a big fan. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that. Do you have a favorite so far?
I really like the one you just did with the racket technician who was talking about strings, and you were saying how little you paid attention to rackets and string. It may have been an older episode, but
that's an older one. With Harry Tom. That's the one.
That's the one from San Francisco. Yes.
Yes.
From Lombardi's, yeah, and I've actually been out there. I lived in Northern California for a while, so I'm familiar with Harry. Yeah.
Oh, he's great. Well, you have such a rich and diverse background in this industry, so I look forward to digging into it. When did it actually click for you that this was your thing and that you could make a career out of tennis?
Well, I was a public parks kid. I wasn't a country club kid, and I grew up kind of teaching myself how to play. Wore out many a garage wall and broke plenty of windows around my house as I learned to play. And I actually grew up in High Point, North Carolina, where I live now. And my life has just come completely full circle. And I actually live less than a mile from the courts that I played on when I first learned to play and the home I lived in. But one of my mentors, a man by the name of Herb Bolick, is still alive, and he lives here in High Point. And he was probably the first exposure I had to, a really skilled tennis professional in a club environment. And so I actually worked for him when I was in college and learned a great deal from him and his wife, Cheryl, about how to, manage club tennis and pro shops and that kind of thing. And from that point forward, I was hooked. I played junior tennis here in North Carolina and played college tennis at High Point College when I went there. So tennis has been in my blood forever. I was a basketball player. I played football. I was a punter and a kicker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was rare too, because what's really full circle, and I don't want to get too far off your question here, is that one of my students now is from a town nearby that we actually played their school when I was we had junior highs then. And I was telling his mother the other day that I remember that stadium we played in because when I kicked extra points, the balls would go over the fence, over the goalpost, over the fence into a busy street that was there. She said, "Yep, that stadium is still there, and the balls still go over the fence in the street." So
Haven't learned.
that's a long time ago. Yeah, but yeah, it's been in my life forever, it seems. And once I got started, I never looked back.
You told me you're 66. I wouldn't out you like that, but you did mention it.
Wow, threw me under the age bus. I got to color my hair or something.
Well, I just think it's really impressive that, a lot of times people reach 60 and they're thinking of retiring. You seem to have absolutely no interest in slowing down and retiring. So what fuels your drive to continue to coach and work with players?
Yeah, the next day does. Yeah, I'm 66. I feel about 46. I get up early. I work out twice a day. I teach. I've got another full-time job that I do on top of that. We moved here to North Carolina. We didn't downsize. We upsized. Our house is 1,000 or so feet bigger than the one we moved from. So, and it's got 3 floors in it. So, when we moved in here, I think my wife and I both lost about 10 pounds just moving up and down stairs for a month, putting boxes away. I still love tennis. I love teaching tennis. I've moved back to High Point, North Carolina, where I grew up. So I've brought my expansive resume home. And one of the things that, and we've talked a little bit about it when I was the 2021 RSPA National Pro of the Year, I actually came back here to take photographs with the award in front of the places where I started, to kind of come full circle. And it was kind of neat to do that. But yeah, it's been with me forever.
So you work out twice a day. What do you do? Do you do weights? Do you run?
Both. No, I don't run. I walk. Probably one of the most underrated exercises in the world, but I walk an enormous amount. I do work out in the weight room. I've got cycles here and a Concept 2 rower here in my room here. I took up cycling a few years ago after, I had to rehab some knees. And there's a bicycle company in Chattanooga, which is not too far from here, called the American Bike Company. They make Quintana Roo. They're mostly known for tri-bikes, but they do make road bikes. And so I had one built by them, and I live on it. When the weather's decent, I absolutely live on that bike. So we just get lost in it. So cycling is another one where I spend a lot of time.
All more low impact, I guess.
It is. I just can't run anymore with my knees and hips. I just can't do that anymore. But I played tennis yesterday indoors with some of my buddies, and I still can get around pretty well. I'm pretty much reduced to doubles, but it's still fun, and I'm going to do it as long as I can.
I love that. I hope to be like that. And I think looking at coaches, as we age, you start seeing.
I'm not. You are.
Okay, well, I age and others age. You start seeing the profession just really taking a toll on their bodies. And I think a lot of times we just are so focused on work and helping others that we kind of forget to take care of ourselves and continue to work in our own fitness. You shared with me that you've had some serious injuries. What would be your main recommendation for longevity as a coach?
Well, you just absolutely have to protect your body. I've got a presentation that I've done in a number of the workshops around the country about injury and prevention. And then mostly the conversations almost end up being, how do you manage them and how do you recover from them? And it's not easy. You have to really go into a mental state almost. It's kind of mind over matter thing. These injuries for me started when I was in my, I guess, late 30s. They call Achilles tendon injuries 40-year injuries. So, I had 2 tear and twos, left and right tear and twos.
Oh, God.
And that was miserable. It wasn't pleasant at all. I told somebody not too long ago that it's almost, and I've never been shot, but I think it's probably the closest thing to being shot, the trauma that you could probably feel. I actually felt like somebody had hit me in the back of the leg with a hammer, but they did in 2 different times playing tennis. But they're difficult injuries because the tendon in the back of your leg is like a piece of rope. And I tell people it's like you're cutting a piece of rope with a fingernail file. It took a long time to do this. And when it snaps, it just frays like a piece of rope. And the surgeons come back and they put it back together and they sew it up. And then you start with a series of lifts and you eventually get back to where you were. I've had no problems with those since then. They've been great. And I'm good about stretching them and making sure that all good. And then it moved on to knees. I went to hips next. So I had both my left and right hip replaced. And that was from years of hardcore tennis and a little osteoarthritis. And so that took its toll on me. And then eventually the knees began to go. So left and right knees eventually went, and I had those replaced. I had an issue with my rotator cuff that I had to have surgically repaired. To go back to your question, though, weight is another issue. If you're carrying around extra pounds, you've got to get rid of it. There's no other way around it. You're putting an enormous amount of, and my weight now is, 160, 165, and I came down from 235 to, pushing 240. And that's made all the difference in the world because the extra weight on your joints would just rips them to pieces. Your body's just not equipped to do that kind of thing. I had a lens replacement surgery over a year ago now, and the left eye was fine. They do those a couple of weeks apart. And then the right eye, I suffered an infection from that one, and I lost the sight in my right eye for 2-3 weeks. It scared me to death.
Yeah.
Typical of me, once I got over the fact that I may not be able to see again, I was trying to figure out how I could teach with one eye.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just that would knock me down. That would really knock me down. And eventually, I was on a very, very high antibiotic dosage around the clock kind of maintenance thing with a retinal surgeon. But on New Year's Day of 2023, I guess it was now, or 4, I was sitting in an operating room with a surgeon telling me that I had a 50-50 chance of saving my right eye. And I mean, you talk about a wake-up call. So going back to your original question, I don't waste a day. I look forward to the next day and on, and they're going to have to drag me out of here kicking and screaming before I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a good reminder to just be thankful for everything, right? Because I think it's very different losing your eyesight from like not being able to run, right? Like your eyesight affects your whole life. But going back to your Achilles, because that's like one of my number one fears, because I've seen so many pros with snapped Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an awful injury to witness in someone else. I can even imagine what it feels like. It like really terrifies me. What do you think led to that? Was it a lack of a certain exercise, lack of flexibility, overuse, a combination? What was your theory on that?
Well, I don't have a theory. I actually have the answer. My situation was that the tendon comes down the back of your leg along where your calf is, and it attaches at the back of the heel at what's called a calcaneus. And I had a small calcium buildup on the back of my heel, and this is what was rubbing against the tendon. And so this is why I said it was like cutting a piece of rope with a fingernail file. It took a long time. So, I'd come off the court and my back on my heel would be swollen and I'd put ice on it. And eventually it would settle down a little bit and then I'd go back. And so the process just repeated itself over and over and over until eventually it snapped in two. Stretching is always going to be helpful. You just have to be very aware. I'm very picky about my feet, my shoes, the socks I wear, my warm-up routines. We're not little kids anymore. We just can't. We're not made of rubber anymore. We just can't go out and play. These guys I play with indoors yesterday, they still go out and warm up for 5-6 minutes, and I'm going, whoa, boys, I can't do this. I need a little bit more warm up than this. I'm not in college anymore.
That's the main difference I think I see now. I'm in my late 30s now, but I feel like when I used to just go out and just start doing mini tennis and then going right into the baseline. Like I was the worst, I would preach to my students, warm up, but myself, forget it. Now it's like, Oh, I have to. I have to take a few laps. I have to do
Yeah.
all the stretches, the band, the whole thing,
Yeah.
for my
Yeah.
arm when I actually do go and play tennis. So I think as you get older, that's key. It's the warm up, just what you said.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge advocate for yoga. I'm like
Hmm.
every tennis player, the younger you can start, the better, because it's not just the stretching and strengthening, it's also the mindset stuff in
Right.
yoga. So
Right.
helpful tennis player, but I'm a huge advocate for all
Yeah.
that stuff.
It's a discipline that you have to make yourself do. And, growing up playing tennis as I was younger and playing college and played a little stint on the old American Express tour, I was a horrible stretcher. Horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
I admit it. I just didn't do nearly as much as I should have. And I'm sure that um, it got me later on down the road for not doing it. Yeah.
It's just so boring. Stretching is
Yeah.
it's freaking boring.
Yeah. It is. It is. You're,
But that's
you're,
why I think
you're
to
right.
yoga, because I feel like you can. There's so many different types of yoga practices that you can definitely find one that keeps you engaged.
Yeah.
There's slow ones, there's fast ones, there's heated, there's
Sure.
so many different. So I think it's just a matter of finding the one that you enjoy and
Right.
taking it from there. And no matter what, you're doing some kind of stretching. And I think as a coach, you're standing on your feet for hours every day. I think that's so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't say enough.
So you are working with high schoolers today. How
Yep.
have you adjusted your coaching style throughout the years? Because every generation is so different. And I'm sure now you can probably feel it more than ever just working with such young players.
Yeah. It's a good question. I was talking to some parents the other day. I was talking about this very thing. And, if you're in this career long enough, and I think you have been, you've probably seen it yourself, your career, it comes in cycles. And at one time was, maybe it was beginner adults, and then it was beginner children, and then it became more high performance players, and then it cycles back to younger kids again. And mine, when I left Oklahoma, this is just 3 months ago, mine was in the middle of a middle school, some elementary school, and high school player cycle. That's where it was. And so this was my wheelhouse. This is where I spent all my time on the court, was basically working with, I did have my USTA ladies and some of those players, but most of them were kids, high school age kids. And so I'm in that cycle now. And so it's going to be a real challenge for me. I've coached a number of players, hundreds of players, not thousands. And I've worked with teams, USTA league teams, but I've never coached until now a team where I drive the bus, where I set the practices, where they do what I tell them to do, kind of thing. Because as well as I do, USTA ladies never listen to what I tell them to do. So,
My
so,
kids
so,
too.
so now I get to kind of be the boss instead of them getting to be the boss. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if I told you this. I'm coming down the stretches of finishing a book. And I know that you had talked on one of your casts about writing a book someday, and it's hard. Trust me, it is extremely difficult to write a book.
I bet.
Um, but this is one of the things that I talk about in my book. It's a chapter. I call it my kryptonite. I am the world's worst at watching my players play. That is my absolute. If there's a weak spot in my entire armor, that's where it is. I get there, and there's a couple of stories in the book that I talk about. But I have these clubhouse meetings with myself. I'm watching them play, and I'm going, "We've been over this 100 times. Why are you not doing what I told you to do just yesterday? We did this yesterday, and now you're back doing it the way that you do it." So it gets frustrating. Now it does have its moments where it all clicks, and they look like they're learning and they're doing what I told them to do. And I always, in lessons, I always joke with if you just do what I tell you to do, when I tell you to do it, it'll all work out. But
Story of the life of a coach.
yeah, yeah, as well as I do that's not reality, and it doesn't always work that way. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be nice to interact with this age group. It's not like it was when I was in high school. Trust me, my basketball coach at our high school was my tennis coach. So this is a situation where, and they haven't had this in the past. And I don't want to sound critical, but high school tennis in the public group and the private group, which is where I'll be, is usually done by a school teacher. It's done by a math teacher or a history teacher or somebody that maybe has a little bit of aptitude for tennis, watch it on TV, and decided, well, this might be fun. I can make a few extra dollars doing this, and it'll be fun. But in this case, these kids coming up have got a 45-year career master professional who is going to be coaching them. And that's going to be a different dynamic for them. And it's going to be different from me because now, hopefully, I'll know a little bit more about the game than they do. So hopefully I'll be able to teach them and they'll be able to have fun and it'll be successful. If it's not, then we'll give it the best shot we have. But that's what I'm hoping that we get out of it and I get out of it. It's been a big part of my career as far as coaching these ages of players. But again, you're talking about two different generations, actually probably 2 or 3 generations ago of players from when I did it to what they're doing now. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know if I survive.
Yeah, I think the trickiest part is the discipline part because, older generations, I think, were just more, I don't know, like, I feel like at home they were taught more, like, respect your coaches, listen, like these things were more pushed by the parents. And now it's like the kids talk back, and they might not be as disciplined, maybe as they were maybe even forced to be. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't in them. Maybe they were just kind of forced to be in the past. What do you think about that? Like coming in and having to deal with that?
Well, it's going to be a challenge. I had a meeting with my AD the other day. He's a wonderful guy. He's just a neat guy. Been doing it for 26 years now. And he's almost like a kind of a mother hen. He's trying to protect me. He's trying to protect me from parents, tennis parents who know more about tennis than I'll ever know. And I'm going, this is not my first rodeo. I've been around parents my whole career, so I'm good there. I'm good. Whether the players gravitate toward what I have to give them, they like me or dislike me, I'm pretty outgoing. I can make friends with just about anybody. And it's going to have to be pretty hardcore, miserable for them to not kind of buy into what I'm going to be doing. I think I've already started to work with some of them privately, and they're just wonderful. They're wonderful people. They're great kids. They come from good homes, and their parents are great.
That's great.
It's like any club. You're always going to have one or two that their lot in life, their career is to wake up in the morning and find a way to make your life miserable. And it is what it is. I'm good with that. Like I said, this is not my first rodeo, and I'm well schooled in parent-coach, parent-teacher negotiations. And the other thing, too, is I welcome parents. I don't hide from parents. I want them to be engaged in what we're doing. And I'm very transparent. The AD, again, was trying to help and be protective. But, I suggested to him that we have a meeting with the parents. And he's going, I don't know if we ought to do that or not. That could get dicey. I said, I used to do this all the time. We used to call it a hot seat luncheon. And we'd have players and parents come in and sit, and I'd sit in a chair just to answer questions. And just like you and I are talking right now, we'd be talking just like that. And once those are done, they have a good idea of where I'm coming from, and I know where they're coming from, and we go from there. You can make it as complicated and as hard as you want to, but at the end of the day, you know what we get to do today? We get to play tennis today. That's what we get to do. So that's the way I look at it. It's not about egos. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's just about let's do this and see how well we can do.
Yeah. I think it's really important to foster a good relationship with the parents,
Sure.
Especially if you're working with high schoolers. College is a little bit different because they're considered adults now, I guess, even though they're not really in college. But I think, when they're in school and high school, I think it's really important to have that relationship with the parents because sometimes you kind of got to coach the parents a little bit too. And guide them through the process because at the end of the day they're just looking out for their kid, right. And you got to understand that. But,
exactly.
It can be overbearing, but that's what you kind of have to put the boundary and say, okay, you're gonna have to trust me on this. But you got to build that trust and you got to build a relationship. And if you don't communicate, and how do you do that? Basically,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So, what's your book about that you're writing?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, it's been a labor of love. It's a little bit of everything. It's not an X's and O's. tennis book. There's plenty of those out there. But it does have some tennis stories in it, some funny tennis stories. It's got some life lesson stories, some inspirational stories, a little bit of everything. I'm hoping to have it out by the middle of the year. And if it makes any money, I'm going to use some of that money to redo the courts that I grew up on right around the corner because they're in bad need of repair. And I've started my grant thing with the U.S. to try and
Great.
get some help there. And so, yeah, it's been a fun process. The problem, and I've heard several of your guests say the same thing. Once you write a chapter, you sit down and you write a chapter, and I'm the kind of person that sits down and I have to go. I go full blast, and it could be any time of the day, 3:00 in the morning, 2:00 in the morning, and just wake up and go. And then you get it into, oh, that's great, that's a good one, and then you kind of close it, and then later on you think, well, maybe I'll change that one line that I wrote, or put this one word in there. Here's something different. So then you start messing with it, and this is where the time comes in. Emma Doyle and I talked about this a while back. You keep messing with it and messing with it and messing with it over and over and over. And then all of a sudden, 3 months has passed, 6 months has passed.
Yeah.
I've been hammering at this thing for probably 3 years, over 3 years. And I've just decided 25 is the year. This is it. Sink or swim. If it's a piece of junk, then it's a piece of junk, and I'll go on to the next book. I'll write an X's and O's book next time. But
Are you working with a ghostwriter or somebody helping you?
no, I'm doing every bit of it. Yeah. All the stories, all the photographs, everything is all stuff that I've collected over time, and the chapters are relatively short, not real long chapters, and it won't be some 10,000-page manifesto. It's just going to be a quick read, kind of fun book with a lot of fun stories in it that I've collected over my career. Some that I still shake my head at, even though they were years ago. But some inspiring ones too.
Is this going to be for tennis players, for tennis
Sure.
coaches, everybody?
Oh yeah, it'll be for coaches. It'll be for players. It'll be for people that know me that maybe not play tennis. Just a really neat collection of stories. And like I said, it's got a little bit of tennis in it. Things like fundamentals that I talk about and mentors that I talk about. Not a lot of how you're going to hold your grip and not a lot of X and O type material. I'll save that for another book.
That's got to be such a huge undertaking, like to write a book. I can't even imagine. I'm an overthinker, so
Yep.
I get what you're saying. Like if I wrote something, then I would want to change it and then change it again, and you're just looking for perfection. And
You will.
perfection
Yeah.
it's not really attainable. That's why I like a podcast, because I can just say what I say and move on, and I might say something different the next time. It's fine. Like,
Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
it feels a little bit different when it goes on print. It's like, this is it.
Yeah, yours is perfect. Mine is permanent. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
I can't go back with like an extra sketch and take it out. Yeah.
So you're also in the golf world. Tell me a
Yes.
little bit about that. How did that come about? Did you always play both tennis and golf? What are some similarities that you see in the athletes in the two different sports?
Very, very good question. I was talking to some people the other day about this very thing. I've spent most of my tennis career in country clubs. And of course, country club tennis is the stepchild of country club golf. And so when I was at Champion Hills, and I was at Champion Hills for about 11 years, that's in the mountains of North Carolina. We had two old dilapidated courts that were two clay courts that had rusted fences, and they were bad need of a lift, and they were just horrible. So when they asked me to come and do a little programming there, I went, as you can probably tell, I went way over the line. So we redid the two courts, and we were a very landlocked situation. And we shared a parking lot with the real estate office, and the swimming pool was close by. And so I met with the general manager one day, and I said, I come from a fitness background as well, because I was a club manager for years in the fitness industry. And I said, what do you think about maybe taking a little bit of space of the real estate office and putting some fitness in there? So they agreed to do it, and we created a little space there where we could build a fitness center. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of this. Eventually, we did away with the real estate office. We made them move, took over the entire building, and built a state-of-the-art fitness center at Champion Hills. And it's still, to this day, probably one of the cornerstones of their marketing processes, where they bring potential members in. And this is a Tom Fazio signature mountain course, very exclusive residential community in the mountains of North Carolina. But in that process, I got to thinking a little bit about, because I was a certified fitness trainer and on and on and on, but I got to thinking about golf fitness and got interested in it and started poking around and came across the Titleist Performance Institute, which is run and managed by Greg Rose, who was a friend of mine. And Greg, coincidentally, I worked with them in the development of Racket Fit. So they are the same people that develop Racket Fit. And so I worked with them when we did that. But I got certified through level 2 fitness at the Titleist Performance Institute. And that's it's difficult to do. The golf swing is incredibly complex. And Greg is an absolute genius at this. His whole world is wrapped up in this. And if you ever have a chance to go to the facility down near San Diego, it is really phenomenal, because they do all of the biomechanical 3D imaging with the sensors, and they can analyze swings. And they have several protocols within Titleist, which they call the Big 12. So you'll go to a golf pro, for example, and the golf pro will take you through your golf swing. Now, I don't teach golf. I train golfers, and I have to be real clear with that with people. They analyze your golf swing. Then I analyze the physical part of your golf swing, and then we work hand in hand together. I work with the golf professional and even the medical professional, which is there's a division for the medical professionals as well when it goes to golf. So we create this team that provides the stroke mechanics, the equipment by the golf professional, the fitness part of it by me, the medical part of it by a physician that's maybe treating them for bad knees or bad hips or whatever it might be. Golfer's elbow could be anything. But so that fascinated me. So I've been doing that for many years now. And then super speed golf is another one that I've gravitated toward as well. And super speed golf is a training protocol using a series of weighted and specially balanced clubs. So I developed a routine for my players, my golfers, where I can do a TPI screen, a 16-point screen with them. I can do a session of super speed golf training for clubhead speed. And the unique thing about super speed golf is that you actually consciously train to both sides. So you have a dominant side and non-dominant side. So the protocols all include dominant and non-dominant side exercises with the clubs. And so I worked with those things, plus weight training programs that I developed and actually got exercises from TPI to develop a golf fitness system of my own, really, based on what I had learned. And that's never failed me. That's actually been very good. Golfers are a funny bunch of squirrels. They will do anything and everything to gain a stroke or two. They will buy a new driver. They will buy a new putter. They will buy any and every kind of gizmo they can find on the internet to get that one little advantage over that guy that keeps beating them every weekend by one shot that drives them absolutely insane. But the ones that take on the fitness part of it, they have to be very diligent. It's a very cumulative process. It's not something that happens overnight, but they eventually see, 5 to 8, in some cases, even 10 miles an hour more on their driver speeds and their overall fitness. And it's really all about balance, range of motion, flexibility, overall body strength. The course at Champion Hills was like I said, a signature Tom Fazio design. And I used to joke with people that the only flat places on that golf course were on the tee boxes and in the bar, because there were hills and mountains everywhere. And I kept telling people, I said, the difference between balance and stability is being able to climb up that hill and find your ball. The stability part comes in if you try to swing your club and don't fall down the hill. That's how bad it was. So with a senior demographic at Champion Hills, which is what I had, that became absolutely imperative. And it got to the point at Champion Hills where every day people were knocking on my door for fitness, number one. And then they'd come in and say, it hurts right here. What's wrong with me? It was almost like a walk-in clinic for exercise and golf. From that point forward, it's just never gone away. I keep it sort of over on the side as tennis is my primary focus, but I love training golfers. It's fun and they get a lot of benefit from it.
That's really interesting. Did you ever do anything with like a weighted racket and kind of apply the
Yeah,
same concept to tennis?
actually, yes. Actually, Super Speed Swing came out with a racket version. They came out with 3 weighted rackets, light, medium, and heavy weighted racket, and a couple of protocols. And I worked with them. I consulted with them a little bit on it initially. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to say, and I may be wrong here, but Jeff Salzenstein was working on this project too. And then I think they just sort of abandoned it. I just don't think it had the same effect with the tennis players that it did with the golfers. Although I thought it was a good idea, but with all the tennis fitness that I already do, I was struggling to really find a place to put it in there because, lesson, and as we talked about a little bit earlier, I make my players stretch. I make them use bands. I use med balls with them. I make them do, stuff that they're not used to doing. So then sticking another weighted racket program in there on top of that, 30 minutes would be gone and we hadn't hit a ball yet. So I struggled with where to fit that in my tennis teaching parts. But yeah, they did do it. Several, I think on court, off court has actually got some in their store as well. They may do something like that, or just a resistance type swing that has the fans on it, it has the fins on it that you attach to the end of a stick, that kind of thing, similar to what a baseball player might use. But I thought it was a good idea, just never quite caught on.
Yeah. I think it makes sense to me. I've even done it as a player where I would train with a heavier racket.
Right.
But the difference in weight is minimal in a racket,
Yeah, it is now, when I was in college. Yeah, we used to go back and not too long ago, I would take old wooden rackets like old Stan Smiths and go out and just hit balls against the wall or something just to get my sweet spot back and just to kind of get a feel. I can't do that now. Those rackets are about 20 pounds a piece now to me. Not a bad idea. The weighted racket was always, I thought it was a good idea, but just never really took off.
So shifting gears just a little bit here, I'm just curious because you've been in the industry for so long, but you've seen all kinds of changes in the industry with different organizations that you belong to. What are your thoughts on the future of these tennis teaching organizations? And what are some changes that you still want to see happen in the industry?
Oh, mercy. I mean, do we have 5 more hours we can go? Yeah. I'm not unlike a lot of people I've spoken to. The RSPA rebranding caught me off guard. It caught me by surprise. I was a little disappointed they didn't let us know they were going to do that. I don't want to throw you under the bus here, but I remember you saying something on one of your podcasts that you felt like this was being force fed on you. It was being forced on you. I agree. I agree with that. It was kind of forced on us, and I think it was probably done out of necessity. I honestly believe that where our industry's going is that the USTA will take over both organizations. There's no doubt in my mind. In fact, I thought it would already be done. The USPTA is almost 100 years old, and they've been around since 1927, and it's been a wonderful organization. And the PTR's been around for a long time, and I'm a member of both. And I saw Dan Santorum not too long ago at an event down in Georgia, and he's a wonderful guy. And for years I was one of those guys that it was us against them. It was always us against them, and we're better than they are, and on and on. But I don't think like that anymore. I really don't. I have a lot of friends who are members of the PTR, who are members of both. They don't go away just because I don't like the PTR or I don't like the RSPA. But I truly believe that what's going to happen is what's already happened around the world. And here we are again. We're in last place here. I spent the last 2 Mays in Italy. at the Italian Open and interacting with some of the federation professionals there. And they're great guys. I did a couple of workshops there, and their federation oversees tennis there. France has the same thing. Germany has the same thing. Australia has the same thing. These are very successful and long-standing, long-operating, very good organizations, and they have one governing body. It's not rocket science. It doesn't need to be so divisive as we've had it in the past. And I actually hope this comes to fruition sooner than later, because I'd like to be involved in that. I'd like to be involved in that umbrella of what that might look like. And one of the premises I ran on the board was that, when this merger happens, I'd like to be at the front door of this and to be a part of what it looks like and how it's shaped as we go forward. I've been a member of the USTA since I was, 7 years old, 8 years old? By the way, I think it was about $8 to join the USTA when I joined it the first time. Now it's almost $50 to join or something. But yeah, there's a lot of good people in all three organizations, a lot of smart people that have had plenty of years to learn how to do this. And so I think it's going to be the best course of action. I always almost took offense when they brought Net Generation on board at the USTA. I thought it, and I still think it's one of the best things they've ever done. And I use it every day. I use it all the time. I use it with adults. I use it with kids. But they kind of got that from Hot Shots Tennis from Australia, and that's what they did. And their programs were very successful. I spoke at the Open in 2014, so I got to interact with the Hot Shots group and participated in their Kids Day. And it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it's just what we're doing now. So I know that the mindset, the brains are there. We certainly have the resources to do what we want to do. I just hope they don't make a mess of it. That's what I honestly think. I think that if you've got too many chefs in that kitchen, it's going to end up being a mess. And I hope they don't do that. I think the merger is inevitable. The USTA is already certifying coaches and getting involved in that. I was at a workshop not too long ago with Craig Jones, a wonderful guy. I love him to death. I've known him for years and years. Very smart guy who's talking about tennis fundamentals, teaching, and with a room full of coaches. And so it's coming sooner than later. I just hope they don't wait too long. And again, I hope they just don't make a mess out of it. I hope it's a nice, smooth transition between the organizations. And I'll be interested to see what it looks like, and I'll support it. Whatever it is, I'll support it unless it comes out, ends up being some kind of thing I can't explain to anybody. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll all be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything official,
No.
But I've definitely spoken with different people, and there's a lot of talk about that happening. But it does seem to make sense to me that the USTA would take that over.
Money is power, and no matter what sport you look at it in the United States, the guys with the biggest purses are the ones that control it all, and yeah. That's the USTA in our case. Again, it's going to take some mindful, professional business and tennis people to come together and make this work for everybody. I mean, I sound like I'm running for mayor, but that's what it's going to be. And I've seen this. I've seen other organizations. I've seen other businesses just go completely in the ditch because this isn't done correctly. And I think there needs to be some real serious thought put to this. And I think it'll be okay. But we'll see. There's plenty of examples around the world that they can copy. If that's what you want to do, go copy somebody else. But everybody else is already doing this.
Right.
Spain's doing this. Ireland.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? Don't you think that it's valuable, I guess, to have separate entities that are more international instead of every country having their own kind of teachings, certifications? Because I think that's the benefit of having an RSPA and a PTR is that they're worldwide.
Right. And I really appreciate that from the PTR. And that's one of the reasons why I got involved with the PTR is the international side of it. Now, the RSPA has had relations with Japan, And I think they've tried to do a little bit other, but they've basically backed off of have any kind of international influence, and they've just sort of settled on the fact that they're going to be more of the domestic product than an international product. But I've had a lot of interaction with the Italian Federation over the last couple of years. I've reached out to the people in Ireland because I'd like to go there and see how they do things. Australia, I've been to. They do a great job down there. So I think that the PTR has really set the framework, the groundwork for a great international tennis influence. And when I look at certifications, and I go online sometimes, and when I don't have anything to do, which is very rare, and look around the world at the way tennis is done professionally from a teaching standpoint, you always see the PTR Ireland, PTR Italy, Germany.
Yeah.
So that's important that we have a presence in those places. And come push to shove, I think that I would almost gravitate more toward that type of involvement if I could stay involved in it, is to be able to work our game, teach our game, and educate coaches on a worldwide platform than just here in the United States. I've got some good friends. Dean Hollingworth has done that. Frank Giampaolo has done that. Bill Riddle has done that. Bill Riddle's all over the place. He's a dear friend of mine, and he's been to every stretch of the globe, I think. I haven't seen him in Iceland yet, but I'm waiting for that day. If he goes to Iceland, I'll go with him, and we'll do a clinic up there for the Eskimos or something. I don't know. We'll do what we can.
I think it's important to keep that international feel to it. And obviously, like, you also have the ITF, you have the GPTCA, right? There are other international options, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, I think those are great to have.
Very important. I think we have to have a mindset that we don't know everything.
Yeah.
These coaches over there, there's a coach over in Italy that's been coaching for 45 years, just like me. And I'm sure if he and I had lunch together one day, we'd have all kinds of things to learn from each other.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot still out there.
All right, Lane. So can you please share with us your grand slam and double bagel moment of your career?
Well, I went all over the board on this one. I think I'll give you a couple of simple ones. Obviously, the being named the RSPA National Pro of the Year was a highlight of my career. Being a public parks kid, I would have to go there. The other one in that category would be a student I had a few years back who I took from basically, she had moved here from France and didn't know anybody, and I took her on, and I got her all the way through high school, and it's a chapter in the book. It's a fairly long story, but ended up getting her to college to play tennis. And I did that all on my dime. So that was definitely a Grand Slam moment for me and her mother. And so that would be one. The double bagel one is a funny story. And again, this is one that's in the book. So I play in a level 2 national tournament in Northern California at a very historic club. It's a level 2, and we have a semifinal, and we have ball kids, we have an umpire, and it's on a Friday afternoon. And this club is small, very intimate, but they've packed probably 500 people in here. 600 people have come out of the woodwork to watch this match on the stadium court. And I'm playing a very good player, Northern California top nationally ranked player. I'm nervous, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I even doing here? I have no idea how I got here. And so we're in the locker room before we go out on the court, and I had gotten a couple of new outfits. I had a new shirt on, and I had a pair of shorts that Nike had put out that was kind of historic in that they had pleats in them, and they were kind of fluffy, and they weren't the old school high-rise tight shorts, but they were more just a little bit looser fitting shorts. So we were sitting in the locker room. I put my rackets in my bags and kind of looking. Lady comes in and she said, "Okay, guys, it's time to go out on the court." So we get up and we go out. He walked out first, and I was right behind him. We go out onto the court, and people are clapping, and they kind of mulling around, getting ready. We go up to the net, and the umpire looks at me, and we look at it. We're going to flip the coin now. I think I call heads. It's heads. Mr. Evans, you won the toss. What would you like to do? So I'll serve. So I reach out. She hands me the balls, and I start to walk back to the baseline. I take the balls to put them in my pocket, only to realize that not only are my shorts on backwards, they are on inside out. So I get about halfway back, and I turn around, and I come back up to her, and I go, I'm going to need to go back in the locker room for a minute. And she kind of looked at me and she goes, are you okay? I went, yeah, I'm okay. But then I looked down and she looked down, and she's in her 70s. And she went, oh my, okay, I guess you better go back in, but hurry back. So I kind of just moseyed out the back, went through the gate, went back out, turned the shorts around, put them back on right, and then came back and played the match. So, yeah. And that's the kind of story that'll be in the book. I just found myself in tennis situations that you couldn't make up. You'd have to experience them to understand them.
That's pretty funny. I think that's the first double bagel that we've heard of.
Yeah,
Here.
that was a double bagel, one for each leg. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you,
and I really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope
Good.
we can stay in contact.
Thanks for having me. It was great fun. Let's do it again.
Thank you, Lane, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Before I go, I'm just going to read you The Man in the Arena, which I mentioned in the intro because I just freaking love it so much. Okay, it goes like this. The man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Isn't that amazing? I love it. All right, I'll see you next time for more Vida Tennis.